In this tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to do a cover using a solid background. As an example, we are going to look at covers by the author J.C. Reed. So if you look at J.C.'s covers, they're very, again, formulaic. They have the bare-chested man on the front. You don't even see his head sometimes. You just see the torso itself. And then in the background, she will typically use a dark background or a solid background. There's a solid gray, solid black, solid white. So let's just look at the cover of one of these a little closer. And I hope you're not offended by bare-chested men, because this tutorial is going to include one, perhaps more. So looking closer at this, you can see again it is a picture of a muscle man. Much of the color has been saturated out to give it almost a black and white tone, a grayscale, but it's got a little oranges and a little bit of tan in it. And you can see the title and the title here and the author's name here. We're going to replicate that now using Word. So to begin, because this has a black background, I'm not concerned with moving images around. I'm simply going to go to Design, Page Color, and choose black. And what that will do is it gives me a black background. Now I'm going to start bringing in the elements. And the first element, or really the only element on these covers, is the male model itself. So I'm going to go out and insert image or insert picture. And I'm going to grab an image of a male model. And this is an image, I've already removed the background of this image because I knew I was going to use it with this. I removed the background in Photoshop. Again, you can remove the background in other photo programs. You can also watch the video in this course about how to remove the background using Microsoft Word. So what I'm going to do now is open up my selection pane. If I go to Layout, Selection Pane, I'm going to rename this. It by default named it Picture 5. I'm just going to rename it Man. And then I'm going to right click, Wrap Text, and Behind Text. And we do this in every lesson. The first things you should do when you bring an image in is to rename it in the selection pane and then move it behind text. Again, if you did not do that and you started typing on this page, it would simply move the image around. You would not have very much control at all where to put it. One other thing I want to show you, if you're using a dark background, you can also use an image that has a dark background and you don't have to remove the background. For example, let me turn off this man and go back to Insert Pictures. And you can see this image already has a dark background, so I'm just going to insert that image just to show you how it will look against a dark background. So you can see the image pretty much took the entire background area or the entire page. I'm going to go through my process. I'm going to call this Man with Hoodie. I'm going to right click, Wrap Text, Behind Text. And so now I can move him around wherever I want him to go. And you can see this image pretty much fits, but if I wanted to make it smaller, I could do so. I just grab it and make the image a little smaller. And you can see that while the background doesn't match exactly, it's pretty close. If I went in and set a background that had this shade here, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Or I could actually use this image full size. Just stretch it back out like it was. So what I'm doing there is I really don't have a background color at all because I'm using my image to do a background. And we'll look at this a little more in the tutorial where we're going to do a cover for a vampire book. But for now, let's look, turn Hoodie Man off, turn this man back on. And again, just to give you a reminder of what we're doing, we are replicating a cover that looks like this. So I want to go ahead and get the rest of my elements in, and those are going to be primarily text boxes. So I will go to Insert, Text Box, Draw Box, and I'm going to draw a box down here for my author name, and I'm just going to use one of my old author names for a placeholder. Now it's up to you whether or not you use all capital letters or you use sentence styles. Typically an author name for the most part is going to be all capital letters. So I'm going to go back, I'm going to format that just to give me a good look at what I have, and then I can go back in and tweak the size and that sort of thing. So I'm going to set that. I'm going to set it as a center. Now I need to get rid of the border and the fill on my text box. So I will right click on the text box, choose Format Shape. And you can also do it from here. It has shortcuts. Let me just tell you this. When you right click, you can actually go to the fill and outline right there. I just kind of like having the tool bin open here because I do like to use it so much. But either way you do it, you are going to turn the fill off. You're going to turn the outline off. And then we're going to make this text white because we are going to be using it on a dark background. So let me go ahead. So there is my author name. Now let me draw another text box. Actually, let me rename it. And it's easy to forget this, but you can always go back and redo it. I'm going to call this author. Now I'm going to put in another text box, or I can actually just copy this one if I like. Just a copy and paste, Control C and a Control V. And I'm going to name this one Title. And let's give this a title. Let's see, what does she call hers? Okay, now see, she has her author name at the top and title at the bottom, so we want to replicate that. So let's make that change now. I think she called hers Lover's Secret. And we'll format it more in just a minute. I just want to get the elements on the page now. And we're going to move her, the author name, to the top. Okay, now let's look at hers again. Let's see what other elements she has. Really, the only other element she has is she's got New York Times best-selling author at the top. And if you're a best-selling author, by all means, put that in there. Or if you have a tagline for your book, and then down here she just has a novel. And she has Lover's Secret in 2 different sizes and colors. So we can make that adjustment as well. So let's go back, and I'm going to just kind of leave things as they are now, and then we can start to do the tweaking. So right off the bat, I can see that that her man, whoops, is a little bigger than mine. So I'm going to size mine appropriately. Okay, and let's change the Lover's Secret to a larger font just to have as a placeholder for now. We don't have to really worry about finalizing it, but I do like to get it in a similar size as to what I'm thinking my end product is going to be. Let me stretch the text box a little bit, and I believe hers is left justified, and she used a larger font for Lovers, or a larger size. I think she also had a gray scale, or a gray color on hers. Let's go back over. Yeah, and she's using a little thinner font, which we can always adjust if we're not happy with the font that we're using. This is a very thick font, so if I go back to my menu and see what other fonts do I have that will fit, I believe that's actually what she's using. It looks like a Gaudi Old Style, which is a Windows or Word font. She was also centering hers. Now again, you do not have to copy hers exactly. All I'm doing here is showing you how easy it is to really replicate what is there or what sample you're using. And so let's get it all like we want it. I'm going one space. I'm going to look at the line space options because it looks like I may have some extra space. Maybe I don't. Maybe that's just going with the size here. So let's pull that down. And sometimes you have to use 2 text boxes because your title won't work in one. So what I can do is I can copy and paste that box. Let me turn our gentleman off here for just a second. And so on this one, I'm going to use the word Lovers. Looks like I have some extra type down there. And then in this text box, I'm just going to put the word secret. And again, the reason I'm doing this is because sometimes it's really difficult to line things up just using words automatic spacing. So what you can do is just put them in separate boxes and put them where you want. Now, always remember, do that behind text. And you'll remember that when you try to move it and it hits a border and won't let you do anything. So there is that. Let's see where lovers is. Let me make sure that I did the behind text on this. All right. And so now I'm going to change this to read lovers. And this one is and again, you could leave them named the default name. I just really prefer to name them something descriptive so I know exactly which layer is which. So again, let's go back over here. And it's not exactly the same font, but it's pretty close. And she has this much larger than I do. Now, when you are looking at your text, you're going to notice in the drop down it'll only go to 72, but you can enter a larger number in there. For example, that's 125 if I want to go even larger. Okay, that's way too large. Again, too large. And the beautiful thing is you just play with it until you can get it exactly like you want it. We're almost there with that, I think. Let's go down to 86 and we're going to leave it at that. So there is lovers, there is secret. So that is going to be the title of my book. And again, I could change the color if I want. I could change really anything I want about it. I want to make sure that I've got this one to white, which I do. And I believe this one is set to a gray. Now, if you're relatively new to Word, the one thing I like about Word is there are multiple menus, meaning that you can use this menu, this pop-up menu, to control or change the style of your text, or you can go to Home and use the menu here. Entirely up to you. It just depends on what you are comfortable doing. So I'm going to make this a little larger now, and that's a little too large. I think I'm going to set it to probably 60. All right, so again, let's look at hers. Similar, very similar. She's got a little different font, but that's okay. We could probably figure out what font she's using if we wanted to. Personally, I just go with the font that I like. And for her name, she's using a large sans serif font. Sans serif simply means there's no little slash on the edges of everything. So let's go back here and let's change ours, although I really like that font. This is the font that I always used for my author names, but let's see what else might look good. The Goudy Old Style is what we're using down below. I really like using a different font for the author name and the book title just to differentiate them a little bit. I really like Palatino Linotype, so I'm going to leave that as it is. Now, on the front of hers, again, she has New York Times bestseller. She has a novel. What we can do is let's grab another text box. And we are going to say a tale of love and romance, ... We're going to change the size there. We're going to make it a little bigger. And you can see it changes, so it gives you an idea of what size it's going to be without even before you do it. We don't want to make it overwhelming. A slogan or a tagline or a subtitle is not supposed to be overwhelming. We are going to make it white text. Now, remember, let's go change it. We're going to call this slogan. I need to change the format of the shape. I need to turn the fill off and the line off. All right. And let's do something a little different. Let's just italicize that text just to set it apart a little bit. So we're going to move that up to here, I believe. So those are my text elements. I'm relatively happy with those. Now let's turn on our man and see what happens. Now, remember in the selection pane, you can tell the layers that each thing is on. The slogan is at the top, the author name is at the top, the title, and our man is at the back, which is what we want. Now, the time comes, do we leave him as he is, or do we want to change the colorization a little bit? I'm going to move this down just a little. And once you get all the pieces put together, then you adjust and you move and you get things where you want them to be. I'm also going to go back and give that text a shadow after I do my guy here. So let's highlight our man here, our model. We already have our format picture pane open, so let's just go up and look at some of the presets for the image and decide what we want to do as far as colorization and saturation and that sort of thing. So click on the image, picture corrections, and we can just kind of play with the presets. Do we want to soften the image a little bit? Do we want to make him sharper? You can see that blurred him out. The images at the forefront really shouldn't be blurred. Save your blurring for things in the background. But let's look at the different presets here. Perhaps we don't want him to stand out so much. If you look at what she did, basically the color was saturated out of the image. So let's go back here to brightness and see, do we want to do anything there? Do we want to leave it as it is? I'm going to just click on reset. We're going to go down here to picture color. And this is where you can remove color. Saturation refers to the amount, the deepness, the richness of the color. So you can see I just took him down to 66% and it muted him somewhat and made him more look like the model on the other book. I can take all the saturation out if I wanted to do a black and white color cover. Black and white can be very impactful, but you just need to make sure you use it accordingly. You don't want to use a black and white cover on a happy book. It's really, it kind of sets the theme. So I kind of like that as far as saturation goes. Now, your color tone has to do with what we refer to as the coolness or the warmth of an image. If an image is warm, it has deep, rich colors. If an image is cool, the color is more of a blue tint. So if we look at where we are with him and compare it to what she did on her cover, you can see it's very similar. Now, you may not like that. You may want him completely in vivid color. If that's the case, you can sharpen him. You can warm up the image if you like. And that really pops to me. I actually like this better than the muted. But again, it's entirely up to you. It's your cover. It's whatever you want to do. Okay, so I'm going to leave it like that for now just to see where it's going. We don't have to worry about cropping it at all. Now, do we like the position? Do we want to move him up or down? You know, sometimes you will get an image that will really interfere with your background. This one really doesn't interfere. Too bad. It kind of goes. We might make him a little smaller, or we can make him much larger. Remember, some of these books don't even have the model's head. They concentrate on the torso, and if that's what you want to do, you just move the image where you want it and size accordingly. Now that's kind of cool there. Let's just leave that there for right now and see what we can do with it. I am going to go in and just soften it just a bit. And when you hit reset, it resets it to the original image that you imported. So what I want to do now is actually look at my text again and create some shadowing for my text. So if I click on a text box, and let me enlarge this so you can see what I'm going to be doing here. Right now you see it's just white text. Well, if I click on text options here in the format shape, I can give that text a shadow. And you see the difference immediately the shadow makes. I can make the shadow larger. I can make the shadow darker if I like, however I want to do it. I really want it to pop. Then I can also give a glow or an outline to my text if I like. If I click on back where I was and give it an outline. If I click on solid outline, you can see my text gets outlined. Now, the issue here is this font is a very thin font, so it really, the outline is almost overwhelming. Now, if I were to change this to a bolder font, you can see it makes a huge difference. So again, something you're just going to have to play with. If you are going to use an outline, which I do like outlines if there's an image in the back just to break up the text, but it really depends on what you want, the font that you're going to use, and how it's going to look. You want a font that matches what you're trying to do on the cover of the book. And because if you have one of these romance books and you use a real odd font or a really frilly font like that, really does not go with what you're trying to do at all. So what I did with all of my books is I finally got a couple of fonts that I really liked, and I primarily used those fonts, and that was really it. And I believe they were, I think Bookman Old Style was one of my fonts that I used. I really liked the Gaudi Old Style. Algerian was really cool for some things. So again, take some time and play with the various fonts that you have loaded on your computer. And keep in mind also that there are thousands of fonts that you can get for free on the internet. And check those out. And again, just make sure your font matches the theme of what you're doing there. So I'm going to kind of leave that. I think I like that. What I've done again is I've given the outline a solid line, and it's black. I could change that. If I wanted to mute it a little bit, I could change it to kind of a gray, and that might look a little better. Let's do the same thing with this one. All right, same thing. I'm going to give the text an outline. Now, I may not want to do an outline on this one because the text is so small, but I would like a shadow, I think. I always like to put a shadow on text just to kind of give it a little depth. And you can see the difference there. Did you see how the depth really started to pop? Let me enlarge it for you. All right, now watch the text there. When I remove the shadow, it's really going to take away some of the power of it. So when I select that layer and I want to give it an outline, so when I click on text options there, I'm going to give it a solid line, and you can see the difference. I mean, a very big difference. Now, you don't want to use a solid line with text this faint because it's just overwhelming, but you can use the shadow effect, and that will give it a little bit of depth. Turn the shadow up a little bit. See there, when I take it off and I put more on. So it just gives it a little more pop on the page. So let's go back out and look at what we have so far. Okay, so I think we're going to make this a little larger. There we go. Sometimes you have to click several times to find what you're looking for. You stretch the box a little bit. Now, that may be too big because our author name is almost that same size, so I'm going to bring it down just a touch, just a little bit here. All right. And again, I'll get these placed where I want them. Let me go ahead and click on these, and I want to give them the shadow effect. Let me open my window back up. Okay, and again, I could give them a line, but that is a very thin font. But I'm gonna go ahead and leave that turned on just for now to see how it's going to look. I'm also going to give that a solid line. And again, this one is, let's see if I can bold this. And I'll also bold this. And just make it stand out a little bit more. Now, really, the man in the background, in my opinion, is kind of a bit much. Now, we could go back over here to him and, you know, we can soften him up a little. We can blur him a little bit. Not sure I want to do that. I think what I would rather do, let me just tone down the color just a bit. I'm going to size him because he's just really, in my opinion, overwhelming. So let me grab him. And sometimes you have to move it so you can get to the endpoints. And again, if you've got a large picture, you can actually move it down. That's not a bad cover there at all, but I think I'm still going to make him a little... Okay, I think that's really more to my liking. All right. Now, there's one other thing that I want to do, and that is bring in a vignette. And I talked about vignettes in another video. Basically, a vignette is just a smoky border that you put around the picture just to break up the hard edges. And you can search online and find pings of vignettes, or you can get them from your stock photo site that you are a member of, or wherever you get your images. Let me go ahead and see if I have one here. I'm going to bring it in just to kind of break it up a little bit. And I'm going to choose, this one is kind of a blue. I'm going to choose this one. It's more of a tannish look. And let me turn off everything so you can see what the vignette looks like when I bring it in. Okay, you can't really see it because the background is black, but let me turn the background to white for just a second just so you can see it. So this is what you call a vignette. And again, it is just a smoky border that you can put around the edges just to kind of break up the rough edges. And let me show you what it will look like when I start turning things back on. I'm going to leave the background off for just a second just so you can see it. Now I'm going to change this to vignette, and I'm going to wrap text behind text. Now when I turn things on, all right, our man in a hoodie, he's still sitting back there waiting on us. See, even that's a cool color, or a pretty cool cover with just that gentleman there. But let's turn him off, turn our guy back on. Now we want the vignette to be in front of the images, not necessarily in front of our text. So if you look right here, the slogan, the author, and even the titles are behind it on the layer map. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move the vignette down just so it is over the picture of the man. Now I'm going to go back and turn the background back to black, and let's see what that's going to look like. All right, so you really can't see the vignette much, although it is blurring out along the edges and at the bottom. So it is kind of breaking it up. You can see this is with it turned off, and then this is with it turned on. It just kind of adds some shadow around here. So that's not too bad at all. That is a cover that you could probably live with. You can, again, move things around if you like. If you want to play with where the guy is, if you want to play with where your text is, you can certainly do that. You know, once you have all of the elements on the page, I keep grabbing him because the vignette is in the way. Let me turn it off for just a minute. You know, I could move him wherever I like. I can size him wherever I like. Again, your readers are not, you know, they're not going to be so exacting that they want a cover to be perfect. If you just get something on there that catches their eye, that's all they care about. Now, another thing you could do is if the black background is just too much for you, you can change that up as well. For example, let's say I wanted to put a little fire in the background. What I can do is go back into Insert Pictures, and I happen to have a couple of backgrounds that just have some fire. I've got others that have woods, but this really isn't a woodsy theme. So let me go here and find my background. And all of the images that I use, I believe I got these off of Deposit Photos. It's like $99 a month, and you can download just tons of images. So if you're a member for 1 month, you get enough images to do for a while. So I could put a wolf behind him. I could put some fire behind him. And let's see what that looks like. Let's insert. And we're going to name this Fire Background. I am going to right-click, Wrap Text, behind text. And right now it's on the layer in front of him. So what I can do is I can either use my arrows here to move it down, or I could just send it to the back. Okay, I'm going to do that. Now I'm going to size it. And now all of a sudden we have an entirely different cover, don't we? We have something that we don't know what's going on. Maybe he's a fireman. Who knows? I keep grabbing that vignette because it's on a layer in front. Let me turn that off. Let me grab this guy. I'm going to move him over a little bit to give the fire just a little more room. I'm going to turn my vignette back on. And not a bad cover at all. So again, this is more of a hot, steamy type romance, but perhaps he's a fireman and he's having a hot, steamy romance in a burning building. Who knows? So that's how you do it. You can do all kinds of different things once you have your images in place and your text in place. Again, if I wanted to make this a little larger, make it stand out a little more, I certainly could. I don't want to make it overwhelming. But you know, your key here, the takeaway is you need to just play with all of this stuff until you get it like you want it. And then once you do, you're probably going to develop your own style that makes it very easy for you to change these covers and do them very quickly. I know when I was doing a lot of my own covers, what I would do is I kind of developed a look and a brand. And so what I would do is all of my covers basically looked very similar, and it made it very easy for me to change them. Now I just went back in and lightened him up a little bit. So might be kind of busy. What you can do is if you think the fire background is too much, you can always click on that layer and you can go into your picture corrections. Now remember, maybe I want to soften that fire. I don't want the fire to be so pronounced, so I'm going to give it just a little bit of a blur. And let me give it a little more. And you can see it's just not as sharp as it was. If I want to tone down the contrast and the brightness a little more, just make that fire a little darker, I can do so. If I want to bring the saturation down a little bit, if I want to just completely take the color out of the fire, I can. So you can see now how having all of these elements on your Word page and then just tweaking them as you see fit, you can make a lot of different covers very easily. And what a lot of authors will do is simply change out the model. For example, if I wanted to make this another book by Aubrey James, I would just put the man in the hoodie and it gives the book an entirely new look and feel. Man, he looks threatening. And what I could do, of course, is I could remove the background there so I could have the fire behind him. So I'm going to go ahead and turn him off. And there you go. And it would be so easy to turn this into a wolf shifter book. Maybe if I brought in an image of a wolf in the background or what have you. So that's it. The takeaway here is this. If you're doing a solid color background, set the page background color. You don't have to worry about bringing in an image. Then bring in your images, bring in your text boxes, and get all of the elements together, and then start tweaking. You want to change the warmth. You want to change the blur or the sharpness. You want to change the size. When it comes to your text, play with outlines and shadows, whatever makes it pop. But what we have here is probably, I think, the makings of a pretty nice book. And again, you just get to tweak it until you get it exactly like you want it, and then you're good to go.